Hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Resistance Live for the 15th of August, 2019. It seems as though we have sorted out all of our glitches, which I'm very happy about. I will let you all know that there is one thing that I want you all to be aware of from the Patreon end of things, which is this. We did discover that there is a slight glitch in the way in which Patreon subscribers get notified about the broadcast being live. So I'm just going to say this, and hopefully those of you who log in and see the broadcast later who are concerned about notifications will get this. You must have selected a tier of patronage in order to get notifications. So if you happen to donate, but you didn't select your tier when you did that, you need to log back in and select your tier, and you will thereafter get notifications. Okay. So encouragement to all of you who are doing all of this. And, thanks to all of you who have been so patient with us while we've been working through all of this. But that last little bit of selecting a tier in Patreon should get you notifications for every time we go live. So huge gratitude to all of you again for your patience in all of this. And we're so stoked that we've managed to finally sort this out. I can't even tell you how excited we are. All right. Couple quick things I want to mention. Shortly after we broadcasted yesterday, we did announce the launch of Haven, which is our 28-day program for respite and relief for activists and leaders and anyone else really who's completely overwhelmed right now by the news cycle. This is going to be a really sweet program. I just want you all to know that we've got 28 days of materials written out for all of you already that are really designed to kind of cultivate incredible healing and soothing practices. And you don't have to stop doing any of your activist work in order to participate. So, whoa, that's a little weird. Okay, I guess I should have stopped my notifications before I went live. Sorry, everybody. So just know this: it's really designed to be something that you can fit into your everyday in 5 to 30 minutes a day, with some overarching practices that are going to be really delicious and sweet. And this is all motivated by how overwhelmed we've all been and how completely burnt out and how much I've been in that place and how much we've seen all of you be in that place. So I hope all of you will join us. I will let you all know that as of this morning, we also have a scholarship form that's gone live for that. We've already had a few incredibly generous people donate scholarships for the program, which is totally rad. Love you all. But the link for both the scholarship application process, which ends at 7 p.m. Pacific next Wednesday. So you have a little bit of a window there to do your application, is live now in Patreon, as is a scholarship donation form. So if you're interested in either donating or applying for scholarship or just registering, everything is there and ready to rock. And we've already got a bunch of people signed up for it. It's just going to be super tasty. I think we have a real need right now for everyone to find a way to kind of decompress, recenter, find community, collaborate with one another on how to keep each other going, really soothe one another through the things that we're living through. And that's exactly what this program is designed to do. So thank you all so much for the positive feedback. As always, you all know that we do a bare minimum of 10% of our attendees in every program in scholarship format. So we will be doing at the bare minimum that this time. And usually it's a lot more than that because we have donations that come along with that. So please feel free, if you are interested in participating and it's a little bit out of your price range, to do an application for a scholarship. And if you are a person of means who has the ability to contribute, we would love to have your support in doing that as well. All right. Thanks to all of you for that. All right. So whole slew of questions today. And across a wide range of topics. So I'm just going to leap into the fact that the Dow Jones dropped 800 points yesterday. I'll also let you know that I actually had dinner last night with a couple of friends of mine who are in industries where foreign investment has been a big chunk of what has supported their businesses. And they're not entrepreneurs. They actually work for companies that are related to that. Every sign that we are seeing right now from the economic standpoint is that we are on the verge of another recession. This will come as no surprise to anyone who has been at all interested in the ways in which the president's trade policies were likely to impact the U.S. economy in the long run. And I'll just add that, everybody who's been looking at this from the standpoint of analysts and economists who know what they're talking about has pointed out for quite some time that the rise that we have been on has been directly attributable to the policies of the Obama administration and all the recovery efforts that were put into place by the Obama administration post the 2007 recession. So it doesn't bode well. And I always have to say this whenever we talk about the economy on this broadcast, that I'm not an economist, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not any of those things. And if you have your own personal concerns about how the economy might impact you, please seek out the appropriate experts and professionals. All I will tell you, though, is that the people who are on the edge of what happens when there's about to be a recession, that I know personally right now, are predicting that we're in a very difficult position at this moment in time. And so, again, the Dow is one predictor, but it's not the only one. The other thing that we are seeing is that in certain real estate markets where there has historically been a lot of financial investment from foreign countries and foreign entities, legal or not, because there are certainly some places where those investments are designed for money laundering purposes and the like. We've seen this with the Russians. Nonetheless, there's been a big downturn in foreign investment there as well. That's always also a sign of a potential bubble. So there's a lot going on here at the moment from the standpoint of the economy that we all should be paying attention to and being aware of. And proceed with caution, I guess is the way to put it. I've been waiting honestly for a moment like what we had yesterday for like 2 years, because there's just no way that with the president's economic policies as they are, his instability, the nature of the trade wars that he's instigated, the way in which he's walked away from trade agreements that were working for the United States, that we'd all, not experience at some point the adverse effects of all of that on the U.S. economy in very dramatic ways. So no surprises. All right. We have questions about Homestead. So you all may remember that over the weekend, I posted a thread on Facebook that was about the fact that there were indications that the kids who had been housed, first of all, let me back up. Many of you may not realize that Homestead was emptied out. We did talk about this a little bit last week. Homestead was emptied out completely in the middle of the night. Homestead being the largest private concentration camp for children that existed under the Trump regime, emptied out in the middle of the night. The kids were shipped who knows where. The same thing happened, by the way, in Brownsville, Texas, which was another one of the most notorious camps that had been run. There were very big questions about where those kids have been transported. We had, through networks of activists that I work with, there were something like 4 reliable reports that a large percentage of the kids who had been housed at Homestead had been transferred to facilities in the Philadelphia area or dumped in Philadelphia. Meaning dumped at bus stations with nothing. And we've been trying to get eyes on the ground and also to network to get other support in that way. The difficulty here, of course, is that in many instances where people have been transferred in the middle of the night, and this goes for individuals or small groups of people, as well as like 1,300 children who were detained at Homestead, they're done under the cover of darkness for a reason. And dozens of blacked out windowed buses rolling into a new detention facility somewhere in the country may not be noticed at 3:00 in the morning. So there's quite a bit here that is of concern. The bad news is that there was an announcement, I think it was last night, actually, it might've been the night before, but last night or the night before, that Homestead is being reopened. And indeed that whether there will be new child detainees put in Homestead or kids who have been moved out will be returned to Homestead is again unclear. So this is just yet another reason why it is so important that from an organizing perspective, we're all sharing information as often as we can on what we're seeing in our local communities, right? And at local detention facilities and at local ICE offices. One of the first ways that we knew, for instance, that separated children were being dumped in New York City at facilities was that people were on the street at 2:00 in the morning and saw a lone adult getting off a bus with 13 children of color who didn't speak English, who were being then moved into a sanctuary facility. So, or it's not even really a sanctuary facility, a detention facility. I should use the right language. Again, this is why local witnesses are so very, 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 very important. And it was one of the reasons why what I said on Facebook was we need to know, what you're seeing. And if you're with a local organization, we want to know who you are so we can help to coordinate. And the unfortunate fact is that there really has not been much more information that's come out of those transfers since we knew that they took place. So it's something that everyone is keeping an eye on. And we will have to keep an eye on going forward because obviously these transfers under cover of darkness are being done to hide things. I mean, I think it makes complete sense to anybody who's looking at it. Like, there's no motivation for moving children out of a facility in the middle of the night to God knows where, unless your intention is to hide where they're being transferred or why they're being transferred from the general public and anyone who may be advocating for them. So lots of reasons to be concerned there. And, again, thanks for the question. Unfortunately, there's not any more information that I have to share on exactly what's happening. All right. We had a bunch of questions about Amazon. We talked about it a little bit yesterday on the feed, and I promised you all I would do some more research on this. I have. We also had questions today from employees at Amazon-owned companies about what you can do to resist. So here's the deal. Amazon AWS, which provides web services, storage services for data and the like, is being used by Palantir, which is Peter Thiel's company, he who is the huge Trump donor. And Palantir is being used to provide data so that fundamentally people who are undocumented or otherwise, immigrants to this country who the administration might want to target can be targeted by the administration and rounded up. Palantir is using Amazon AWS as a storage facility for its data. There is an organization within Whole Foods that, as a subsidiary, an owned subsidiary of Amazon, called Whole Worker. And this is for those of you who are employed by Amazon-owned companies, that has been organizing in the last few days to resist and boycott Amazon's support of Palantir and ICE. And that Whole Worker, by the way, is also the organization within Whole Foods that is working to unionize. And they apparently last week leaked a video from inside Amazon about how Whole Foods should resist unionization that has kicked up quite a bit of a scandal there. So that is the chain of connection between Amazon, ICE, and Palantir. The other thing I should let you all know is that one of the things that I'm aware of, because this has happened to fellow activists and high-profile folks who are speaking out, like myself. Fortunately, it hasn't happened to me yet. Hopefully, knock on wood, it won't. But I'm aware of some people who have been targeted for posts on Twitter or posts on Facebook that are deemed by the administration to be of concern. Those people are also being profiled by Palantir. And this is one of the reasons, by the way, why a number of the protests against what's been happening in the camps have also been targeted to Palantir, because Palantir is an integral part of the data mechanisms that are being used right now to round up undocumented folks that this administration wants to target, as well as activists and organizers who are working against this administration. So there's a lot to be concerned about there. And for those of you who are interested in getting involved in this, seriously, go Google what's been happening with Whole Worker and Amazon. There have been protests in New York City recently by Amazon employees around these issues. There's plenty of opportunity there to organize within your subsidiary company if this is an issue of concern to you. And there's obviously already roadmaps that have been built by those employed by Amazon and Whole Foods to do this. Okay, so that's that. Epstein. I know I said yesterday on the broadcast, and I'm going to reiterate this, that I feel like we have a lot more important things to focus on than how Epstein died. There was a little bit of breaking news yesterday that I would be remiss if I didn't mention, which is that his autopsy apparently showed several broken bones in his neck. The results of this are inconclusive. What experts are saying is that while hanging yourself could result in breaking these particular bones in your neck, particularly if you were an older person, and he was 66, there are questions about the nature of the fractures because they could also be consistent with strangulation. I'm just going to say what I said again yesterday, which is that we really do not know what the end result of this is going to be. I am concerned about how focused people are on the salacious nature of his death, as opposed to, for one, the fact that his suicide, or however he died, has deprived his hundreds of victims of justice, which to me is honestly where a big chunk of the focus should go. And Molly Jong-Fast, by the way, wrote a really great piece on this yesterday in Glamour magazine, which you all should go read. But I'm also concerned about the fact that there's this ongoing, erosion of human and civil rights in this country. And, Epstein's death is not where we need to be focusing the vast bulk of our energy. So, again, be aware that it's out there and that it's happening, and that there's some question about whether the evidence of his body indicates suicide or strangulation. we'll know more when we know it. In the interim, our job should be to continue to do all that we can to fight back against the administration. All right. Oh boy, there's just like so much shit to cover this morning. Okay, Rachel Maddow has been doing some incredible work lately about Rusal, the company that put an aluminum plant in Kentucky in Mitch McConnell's district, and the way in which that company has been seeking to sway local politics at the state level by putting or offering to put aluminum plants into other jurisdictions where they may be able to influence Republican politicians. Some of you said, like, how do we fix this? And I have to come back to kind of like the big statements that I've made since the very beginning of this broadcast. And they relate to things like this. Citizens United has to be overturned, whether by legislation or by a new decision of the Supreme Court. The impact of the Citizens United decision allowing private dark money to go into campaigns is at the root of so much evil of where our government finds itself right now, that it's almost impossible to overstate the adverse impact. So we need massive campaign finance reform. I don't think there's any Democratic candidate, frankly, save maybe Joe Biden, who is taking big corporate donations, who objects to that. Right? I don't think there's anyone who objects to that. So campaign finance reform is at the top of the list of what would stop this. The other thing that potentially would stop it would be government oversight. And, some of you did ask, why is House oversight not investigating this? They may be. I will let you all know that, they can start investigations and issue subpoenas and not announce it publicly. So it's quite possible that there's already an effort to seek congressional oversight, to exercise congressional oversight over Mitch McConnell with regard to this deal. And there may be additional efforts underway as well that we don't know about. But the fundamental question of, like, how do you stop this kind of adverse influence on elections? Well, just know this. It is already illegal for foreign countries to make donations to campaigns. However, the problem with Citizens United and the way that super PACs are allowed to take dark money is that, for instance, if you're the NRA and you take a donation from Russian citizens, and then you, the NRA, as your PAC, make donations to politicians through the NRA, you're technically hiding the fact that foreign money has illegally been funneled to people who are running for office. So, again, it's investigations, it's oversight, but it's also massive campaign finance reform. Like there can be little doubt at this point that we really, really need it. So, that's how that gets ended. And, obviously, if there's something more explicit, like Mitch McConnell has received a bribe, hypothetically, he can be prosecuted and impeached for bribery. And he's not the president, so he doesn't have any kind of like executive privilege against being indicted while in office. All that said, this is again something that we absolutely would need to put into our request to Congress. And I don't think there's anything wrong. Like, once again, in every effort that you make to reach out to your local representatives. And by the way, I just want to say thank you to those of you who are posting your updates. I've heard from like 3 of you in the last 12 hours who spent time yesterday in your local representatives' offices advocating for impeachment. Some of you are doing, have gotten good results out of that. Most of you have not. I know a lot of you are undertaking efforts to do that right now on the recess, which you should continue to do. But all that said, the overarching solution to this is to get the president out of office, to take back the House and the Senate, to elect a Democrat, and to put in campaign finance reform legislation. That's the end long solution of this. So to somebody who's asking me on the question feed about whether this is money laundering, this is actually not classic money laundering. This is political influence campaigning through dark money. Money laundering is usually where, you take dirty money, you invest it in something, and it's washed, so to speak, and then you take your money out. Okay, so like the big example of this, of course, is Russians buying multiple condos in Trump Tower for cash, sitting on those apartments for however long it takes to avoid a flip tax and whatever, and then selling those apartments at a profit and taking the money back out legally. That's a traditional form of money laundering, right? The other thing, this is very similar, by the way, to what the mob would do, where they would invest cash into a business, then the business would use that money, and then profits would be taken out of the business that would appear to be legal. So it's not traditional money laundering, but it is dark money political influence without question. And the other thing that's a little bit dangerous about it is that it does put local politicians in a place of looking like they're doing right by their constituents, right? Because they're bringing, business, even if it's the Russians, right, into their state. They're creating jobs. And then on top of it, if there's been a backdoor deal cut around this, right, like you refuse to bring legislation on sanctions to the floor of the Senate in exchange for having an enormous aluminum plant put into your district that creates jobs, that in and of itself, by the way, is a form of compromise. And obviously has degrees of political influence thereafter that are exponential if you're someone like the Senate Majority Leader. So it's very concerning, very, very concerning. And I think we all ought to be aware that, there's a whole agenda. Hello, Elizabeth Warren. There's a whole agenda. There's a plan, but with quite a number of our Democratic candidates on how to fix so much of this, right? And one of the things that's going to be required, assuming that we do everything we can after 2020, like assuming we get a Democratic president and we take the Senate, that we continue to support this agenda going forward to every extent that we possibly can, so that nothing like this can ever happen again. All right. This morning, Israel banned Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib from entering Israel. We had a very strange series of events over the course of an hour where the White House press secretary said that the president had not asked Israel to ban their entrance. Then the president tweeted that it would be a good idea for them for Israel to ban Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib because they had in the past supported the Palestinian citizens. And then Israel did it. And, the tweet that the president put out was like, they hate Israel. They're un-American. Of course, Israel should prevent them from entering. I just want to let you all know that, by the way, this is an explicit violation of the speech and debate clause in the Constitution. It's an impeachable offense. Because the Constitution forbids anyone, including the president, from preventing a member of Congress from speaking. And so there is already a lot of speculation right here on this particular issue out there in the Twitterverse and in the media. And it is yet again an example of the president sowing hate and division, sowing racism. And, I'll also just add, for those of you who want to read up on some of this from the standpoint of a broad variety of Israeli and Jewish perspectives, I'm going to give you her Twitter handle, at the RADR is Rabbi, I hope I remember her name, Danya Rutenberg. I'm going to say that. I'm hoping I'm going to say that right. Who wrote an incredible thread this morning on the fact that there are Israelis who support a different approach to the Palestinians. And there are plenty of Jewish people out there who support a different approach to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict than what the current Israeli administration has in place. And so, as always, this is a very complicated issue. I encourage you to read the people who are, on the front lines of it, the people who have the greatest understanding of it, who are out there talking about it. But please understand that the president's gesture here is unlawful. It's unlawful. And, fundamentally, it's yet another example of why he needs to be impeached. All right. Last thing for today. And, by the way, I'll just mention, just to close that last point, I did this morning go on Twitter and say that I was really going to encourage everyone to send love to Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib because they need it, because they're under constant attack, because as someone who's had kind of like a tiny fraction of the level of Twitter harassment that they live with every day, it is hell, and they need our support. So I encourage you to go, by the way, over to Twitter and send them some love. And, I'll just let you all know, like Rashida Tlaib did a whole video to me at the insistence of one of our followers here at one point, thanking me for my support of her election campaign in 2018. I mean, these are duly elected congresswomen. They are badasses. They are there to make a difference. And they need to hear from us that we support them. And not just that we hate the president for what he said to them, but actually that we are behind them 100%. So, please go do that. It's incredibly important that you do. Not just for the sake of those two incredible women, duly elected congresswomen who are fighting death threats daily to make a difference in this country, but also because it's important for everyone else to see that we support them. Yes, the Twitter account name, again, for those of you who are asking, is at the word THERADR. All right. Last point for today. I talked a little bit yesterday about in the context of like the need for relief from the kind of constant inundation of the news cycle. I talked about this particular issue that there is a call right now for creative solutions to resistance. One of the things that I have been hearing a lot about over the last couple of days from people who are really, in the same position I've been in, really indoctrinated by the news, overwhelmed, who are kind of experts in their given area, whether that's authoritarianism or law or fascism. I've heard from an awful lot of people that, one of the most effective solutions to the sort of desire to run away and disengage that happens when we get overwhelmed by trauma is artistic and humorous resistance. And so one of you said to me, like, can you share artistic projects that you come across that are significant, that are resistance oriented? Can you share, the various other things that you come across that are relevant? Absolutely. I will absolutely endeavor to do that with all of you, because I think it's part of the solution of how we keep going. I will add one other thing. If you have not watched Trevor Noah from last night, he did a 7.5-minute segment on how the president's immigration policies all would result in Melania being deported. I highly encourage you to go watch it, because at the bare minimum, it'll make you laugh for 7 minutes. And it also points out quite dramatically the hypocrisy of where we find ourselves right now in this administration. Okay, so that's it for today. I want to send you all a lot of love. Again, much thanks to all of you for your participation and your patience with us. Haven is open, GaiaLeadershipProject.com/Haven. If you need a break, if you want 28 days of community and love and respite and support and practices that are going to help you kind of like cope with all of this, please consider joining us. The scholarship form application is also live. Reminder to all of you, that will be live until next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific. You will be notified by a week from tomorrow as to when, as to whether or not you've gotten your scholarship. And also, we've had a number of generous donations already from people who are wanting to sponsor others. We now have a form set up for that, which is also linked on Patreon. And there's a whole separate post on this. So much love to all of you. Again, thank you all for your patience during our transition over to Patreon here. Just lots of love to all of you. Take care of yourselves. All right. Great gratitude and generosity for your support. And I will talk to all of you tomorrow. All right. Thanks so much. Bye.